I remember it like it was yesterday, though I'd hoped I'd never have to. It was late, closer to midnight than I'd realized, and I was driving home from a friend's place. On that long, empty stretch of highway outside of town. You know the one, where the trees seem to press in from both sides. And every few miles there's only a flickering street lamp, if you're lucky. I was tired, my hands gripping the wheel a little too tightly. Music playing low in the background, because silence at that hour felt heavier than it should. I just rounded a bend where the road splits near that abandoned gas station, the one no one goes to anymore. When I saw him, or maybe it was her, I honestly can't remember the details that clearly. But the thing that makes it stick in my mind is how sudden it was. 1 second there was nothing, just a dark road. And the next, headlights caught a figure standing there, in the middle of the lane, completely still. I slammed the brakes hard, tires screaming against the asphalt, my heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, just stayed there. And for a moment I thought I'd hit someone. But the figure wasn't right. They were too still, not swaying, or jumping out of the way like anyone sane would. Just planted. I leaned forward, trying to make out details in the glare of my headlights. And that's when I noticed it. No face. Or at least, nothing I could identify as a face. Shadows curled over it, twisting in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Like the light itself didn't want to touch them. I remember my voice cracking when I whispered, "Hey, are you okay?" And it didn't respond. I tried to swerve around, but the figure shifted slightly, and I swear the movement made the air feel heavier, like I'd suddenly inhaled water. I hit the brakes again, and my phone slipped off the passenger seat when my hands shook, clattering to the floor. I grabbed it and dialed 911, but all I could get was static. Just static and a faint, high-pitched hum that made my teeth ache. I don't know what made me do it, but I got out of the car. I told myself I'd get a closer look, make sure this person wasn't hurt. The night was cold, but I barely noticed. Each step toward that shape felt like walking through syrup, like the road itself was resisting me. And then it moved. Not a step, not a stumble. It just shifted, almost gliding toward me. And I froze. My instinct screamed at me to run, to get back in the car. But my feet didn't listen. It stopped, maybe 10 feet away. I can still see it in my mind. It had a shape like a man, maybe. But wrong. The limbs were long, bending at angles that shouldn't exist. Hands hanging too low, fingers dragging along the asphalt. And then came the smell. Rot. Metal. What earth? Not human. I knew that, but somehow familiar. Like a nightmare I'd seen in childhood. The kind you can't wake from. I think that's when I started screaming, but my voice sounded muffled, like it wasn't mine. I stumbled back toward my car, tripping over the curb, heart hammering. I reached the door, yanked it open, and slammed it shut, just as I caught sight of its eyes. Or what I think were eyes. They reflected the light of my headlights. But wrong. Too bright. Too wide. Too knowing. Like it had been waiting for me. I locked the doors and fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice before I could start the car. And I didn't look back. Not once. I floored it. Tires squealing. lights blinding me as I sped down that road, only daring a glance in the rearview mirror when I felt it. Watching. Always watching. By the time I reached the edge of town, my hands were raw from gripping the wheel, eyes burning from staring at the rearview, waiting for some sign of movement. Nothing. Just the road behind me, stretching empty and black, my chest heaving. I tried to convince myself it was a person playing a prank. Someone in a costume maybe, or a hitchhiker who had vanished into the shadows. But it wasn't. I knew it. And I still know it. That night I didn't sleep. Not a wink. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside, I imagined it standing there, just beyond the light, waiting for me to forget it, to open a door, to let it in. I told myself I was being paranoid, that adrenaline and exhaustion were making my mind play tricks. But then I found the scratches. I hadn't noticed them at first. Small marks along the passenger side door, deep enough to catch my nail. Straight lines, not jagged, almost deliberate. And they weren't there when I left. No stones or branches could have done that. They were too clean, too intentional. My stomach turned over when I realized I hadn't even driven through brush, hadn't touched anything sharp. I called the police the next morning, explained what I'd seen, showed them the scratches, tried to convey the fear I'd felt. They were polite, but dismissive. Probably a deer, a prank, someone messing with you, the officer said. But they didn't see the way the asphalt behind my car seemed pressed, as if something had slid along it, not walked. They didn't see the outline I swear I saw in the mud at the gas station, where I stopped later for gas, like a figure melted into the dirt and then just disappeared. I don't drive that road anymore. I take the longer route, the one with more lights and more traffic. But sometimes, late at night, when the road is empty and my headlights catch a shadow in the corner, I think I see it again, standing there, waiting, not moving, just watching. And I know, if I ever slow down, even for a second, it will move, and I won't make it. I tried going on with life after that night, pretending the fear was something I could outgrow, like a bad childhood memory. But fear doesn't fade when it's real. It waits. It sneaks into the spaces where logic can't reach. And for weeks, I kept catching myself checking the locks twice, sometimes 3 times. I'd wake up at odd hours, convinced someone was standing in the hallway, or just outside my window. I kept telling myself it was anxiety, stress from work, from everything. But deep down, I knew it wasn't stress. It was anticipation. About a month after the encounter on that road, something happened that forced me to stop pretending. I was leaving work late. Another overtime shift I didn't want. And I remember the parking lot lights buzzing overhead. The kind of flickering orange that makes everything look washed out and sickly. My car was parked near the far edge of the lot. Everyone else had already gone home. I unlocked my door, slid in, and took a second to breathe before starting the engine. That's when I noticed it. A smell. Not strong at first, but unmistakable. Metallic. Damp. Something like decaying leaves mixed with rust. The same smell from the road. The same one that clung to that thing. It was faint, but there, woven into the fabric of my car. My throat tightened. I leaned forward, sniffing the air like some desperate animal, praying I was wrong. Then I saw the smear. Just a tiny, dark streak across the inside of my windshield near the bottom corner. Something I should have noticed earlier. But exhaustion makes you blind. I rubbed my thumb across it. It didn't budge. It had dried, leaving behind a faint brown shadow. Blood. I don't know how I knew, but I did. And it wasn't mine. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped my keys. I drove home with that smell drilling into my nose, every shadow on the road prickling my skin. When I finally got home, I was spinning between calling the police again and just crawling into bed, pretending none of this existed. But I didn't get the chance to decide, because when I stepped onto my porch, there was an envelope taped to my door. Off-white. No writing. No stamp. Just stuck there with a strip of filthy tape, like someone had pressed it on with muddy hands. My whole body locked up. I remember scanning the yard, looking for movement, for footprints, for anything. Silence. Just still air, and the creaking of my porch boards under my feet. I peeled the envelope off slowly. Inside was a photograph. One single, glossy picture. It was me taken from behind, standing in the middle of that road the night I'd first seen it. I was leaning forward, looking at the figure in the headlights. The creature. The person. Whatever it was. Its shape was there too, caught in the beam of my car's light. But in the picture, it looked closer. Much closer than I remembered. Worse. There was a hand on my shoulder. Long. Pale. Wrong. I never felt that hand. I never saw it in the moment. But in the picture, it was resting on me, like it had been there the whole time. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. My porch. My street. My entire neighborhood suddenly felt exposed. Vulnerable. Like every window was watching me. Like every shadow knew something I didn't. I stumbled back. Dropped the photo. It fluttered to the boards, face down. And underneath the envelope, stuck to the door frame, there was something else. A mark. Scratched into the wood. The same deliberate, straight lines I'd found on my car. But this time there were 4. 4 long, vertical slashes. Deep enough that splinters curled out. Fresh. I touched one and felt the wood crumble a little. It hadn't been there that morning. That was when I realized. This wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. Whatever had stood in my headlights that night. It followed me. It knew where I lived. It had been close enough to take a photo, to press its hand against my shoulder, without me noticing. And if it could get that close without a sound, without a breath, what else could it do? I went inside and locked everything. Deadbolts, windows, even pushed a chair under the doorknob. Like some terrified kid, I paced. I checked every corner. I swear I heard something outside. Soft scraping, like fingers dragging along the siding. But every time I looked, there was nothing. I couldn't stay there. My house felt too open, too exposed. I packed a bag in under a minute, barely thinking, tossing in clothes, my wallet, whatever I could grab. I decided to drive to my sister's place, 3 towns over. She had kids, a dog, alarms. people around. Maybe whatever this was wouldn't follow me there. Maybe I'd be safe just long enough to figure out what was happening. I backed out of my driveway, heart pounding so loud it felt like it was shaking my whole body. The street was empty, except for the pale wash of my headlights. I drove slowly at first, scanning every inch of the sidewalk. I didn't see anyone. Nothing moved. But half a mile out, near that old railroad crossing with the busted lights, my radio flickered on by itself. I hadn't even touched it. Static poured through the speakers. Sharp, high-pitched. That same teeth-aching tone I'd heard when I tried calling 911 that night. My breathing turned shallow. I reached for the knob to shut it off, but the static cut abruptly, and a voice whispered through. Just one word. My name. Drawn out. Distorted. Like someone was speaking through water. I swerved hard, nearly hitting the guardrail. I turned the radio off, slammed it off, and it stayed silent. But my name, it still echoed in my head, like it had been spoken right next to me, not through the speakers. When I finally got to my sister's house, I parked far down the street and watched the place for a few minutes, making sure nothing looked off. Then I forced myself toward the door. I didn't want to scare her, didn't want to bring this nightmare into our home, but I had nowhere else to go. Before I knocked, I looked back down the street. That's when I saw it again. At the far end, just beyond the range of the streetlights, there was a shape, standing perfectly still. Long limbs, head tilted. Impossible to mistake. It hadn't followed me. It had gotten here first. This time, it didn't move. It didn't come closer. It just watched. Like it knew I knew. Like it was waiting for something. And that was the moment I realized. This wasn't just some creature stalking me. This was a crime. A hunt. A deliberate, patient hunt. And I was the one being cornered. But the worst part, the part that still keeps me awake, isn't that it followed me. It's that it wanted me to know it could. I remember the first time I noticed it, and I can still feel the way my stomach dropped that evening. I was driving home from work, just past 9. Tired. Windows down because the air conditioning in my old Honda had died weeks ago. The streets were quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the shadows look heavier. Like they're waiting for something. I merged onto the highway. And that's when I saw it. This black SUV. Just behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Big city, late hour. Someone's probably headed home too. But the way it stayed there, riding my tail like it was glued to my bumper, it started to sink in. Every lane I changed, it changed too. Same speed, same distance. My heartbeat started picking up. I told myself it was paranoia, maybe a coincidence. But when I took the exit for the back roads near my apartment, I realized it wasn't. That's when I started noticing the patterns. How it didn't speed up or slow down. Just kept that constant, almost calculated distance. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Knuckles whitening. And I tried to shake it. I sped up a little. Careful not to break the law. Hoping it would be too obvious. Hoping it would turn off somewhere. But no matter what I did, there it was. Always there. I could see the tint on the windows. Couldn't make out the driver. Couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but something about the way it moved made my stomach tighten like a fist. I tried calling someone, anyone, but my phone had a dead spot right there on the road. I cursed under my breath, fumbling to find another way. Something, anything that would make it stop following me. I remember gripping the wheel and whispering to myself, "This isn't real, this isn't real." But deep down, I knew it was real. I could feel it watching. Like it wasn't just behind me. It was waiting, studying, calculating. I took another turn, thinking maybe if I zigzagged through familiar streets I'd lose it. But that SUV was patient. Too patient. Every street, every red light, it followed. I tried to keep calm, keep rational, but my thoughts started spiraling. What if it's someone I know? What if it's just a random person? But for some reason, they've decided I'm their target? The rational part of my brain said, "Don't panic. Just get home. Call the police when you're safe." But the primal part, the part that knew instinctively what danger felt like, screamed at me to run, to hide, to not let it see where I lived. I drove past a 24-hour convenience store, thinking maybe I could duck in there, make it look like I was just stopping for gas or snacks, blend in with the normalcy of other people. But as I slowed down, the SUV slowed too, just enough that I could see its darkened windows, reflecting my own worried face back at me. I tried to stay calm, pretending to check my mirrors, pretending to be casual, but every instinct told me this wasn't just some random tailgater. This was deliberate. I remember gripping my keys like a weapon in my pocket when I finally turned off the main road and onto the smaller streets near my apartment. My neighborhood was usually quiet at night, and I figured if it followed me all the way here, I'd have to do something drastic. But even as I turned onto the street where I lived, the black SUV followed. I caught glimpses of it in my rearview mirror, the headlights reflecting off the houses, making them look empty, abandoned. My house came into view, the little porch light flickering, and I realized I couldn't just pull in. If it's watching, it knows where I live now. My mind raced with options, none of them good. I decided to keep driving, to circle the block, thinking maybe it would give up. Maybe it would be satisfied with the chase. But every time I tried to lose it, I caught it again in the rear view, sitting there, waiting, like it had all the time in the world. I felt trapped in my own car, in my own life, like some predator had entered a game I didn't even know I was playing. My breaths came fast, shallow, and I realized my phone had finally gotten a signal. I called 911, and I can still hear myself, talking fast, voice shaking, trying to explain where I was and what was happening. But even while I spoke to the dispatcher, I could see the SUV shift, as if it knew I had done something. I didn't know what to do. I drove aimlessly, trying to stay in well-lit areas, trying to keep people around me so it would feel less threatening. But the SUV just matched my every move. I remember praying, not religiously, but in that panicked, desperate way, where you're pleading to anything that might care. I don't know how long I drove. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe an hour. It felt endless. The streets started to look the same. The shadows deeper. The night heavier. My apartment didn't seem like an escape anymore. It felt like a trap. And then, something changed. The SUV slowed down slightly. Still behind me. But now it wasn't right on my bumper. My mind tried to read into it. Rationalize it. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe the driver was tired. But something about the way it hovered, like a dark presence just outside my vision, made my skin crawl. I knew then, this wasn't going to end by me just getting home. This wasn't just someone following me. They were marking me, studying me, and for reasons I couldn't understand. They were patient enough to wait for whatever came next. I kept driving. No idea where. Just away from home. Away from that feeling of being hunted. I thought about turning into the police station. About stopping in a crowded parking lot. But I was afraid if I did, it would just follow me in. And then what? I was trapped in my own fear. In my own paranoia. In a situation way beyond anything I had ever imagined. And as I drove, that SUV stayed behind me. Silent. Like a shadow that had taken form. Like some impossible thing that existed solely to watch me. I remember the moment when something in me snapped. When fear stopped being vibrating panic and shifted into cold, razor-sharp clarity. I'd been circling neighborhoods so long, I couldn't even feel my legs anymore. My fingers were numb from gripping the wheel. The dispatcher was still on the phone, trying to keep me calm, but I could barely hear her over the pounding in my ears. I finally told her, I can't go home. They'll know where I live. My voice cracked. I hated how small it sounded. She kept telling me to head toward the nearest police station, that officers were being notified. But it felt like the streets were folding in on themselves. Like no matter where I turned, I was trapped in the same loop. And that SUV, God, it never left. Even when I hit a stretch of road where the streetlights were working, the headlights behind me didn't flicker or sway. They stayed locked on me, like a spotlight. Whoever was inside, they weren't in a hurry. They weren't panicking. They weren't sloppy. They were calm. Calm in a way that terrified me more than anything else. Because calm meant experience. Calm meant purpose. Calm meant they'd done this before. I turned down a long industrial street. Old warehouses. Shut down mechanics. The kind of area where nobody sticks around after sunset. I didn't even realize where I was going until the buildings around me looked unfamiliar. Their windows boarded. Their parking lots empty. And something about the emptiness made me even more aware of how alone I really was. The dispatcher asked me for cross streets, but I couldn't see any signs. Then the call dropped. Just cut off. 1 second of voice. The next nothing. I felt the world squeeze around me. My phone screen showed no service. And I swear I felt something inside me crumble. That's when the SUV suddenly sped up. Not enough to overtake me. Just enough to close the gap. Like it wanted me to notice. My whole body went rigid. I pressed my foot to the gas. And my little car whined in protest. But it answered. The engine screamed as I pushed it harder than I ever had. The SUV matched my speed easily. Almost effortlessly. I glanced into my mirror. And finally saw it. The driver's silhouette. Just a shape. Not a face. Not any detail. Just a figure sitting perfectly still. No gestures. No movement. No sign of emotion. Somehow that made everything worse. Then the SUV drifted slightly into the other lane, gliding like it was preparing to pull up alongside me. That was the moment I felt real, paralyzing dread. Not the kind that makes you freeze, but the kind that makes your hands shake uncontrollably. I knew I couldn't outrun it. My car was too old, too slow. Whatever they were driving had power behind it. So I made the only choice I had left. I hit the brakes as hard as I could. My seatbelt dug into my chest, and my car skidded, tires screeching loud enough to echo off the warehouse walls. The SUV overshot me by several yards before its brake lights flared red. For the first time since this nightmare began, it was in front of me instead of behind. My brain screamed at me to turn around, to flee. But the road behind was too narrow and filled with debris. I wouldn't have made the turn in time. So I did the stupidest and bravest thing I've ever done in my life. I pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned shipping warehouse and killed my headlights. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely turn the key. I slid down in my seat, chest heaving, trying to make myself as small as possible. I stared out at the empty lot, praying the SUV would pass by. That maybe I confused it. Maybe I'd bought myself enough time. For a moment, everything was silent. Completely silent. Then I saw the SUV's reverse lights. The vehicle slowly backed up until it was facing the entrance of the lot. It didn't pull in. It just sat there, engine rumbling low, pointing directly at me, like it could smell where I was. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I crouched even lower, the upholstery scratching against my arms. Every sound felt amplified. The ticking of my cooling engine, my own ragged breaths, the distant hum of a highway. I couldn't reach anymore. After what felt like an eternity, the SUV began to move. Slowly, deliberately. It pulled just inside the lot and stopped. The driver's door opened. I didn't see a weapon. I didn't see a face. I didn't see anything except a dark figure stepping out, standing perfectly still. Then, one single step forward. Not rushing me. Not charging. Just stepping. Like they wanted me to know. They had time. I don't know where the strength came from, but instinct took over. I shoved my car into reverse and slammed my foot down. The tires spun on gravel, fishtailed, caught traction, and shot me backward. The figure lurched left, startled, and I didn't wait to see what they did next. I swung the car around, in the tightest arc I could manage, and floored it toward the main road. I didn't look back. Not once. My eyes were locked on the road ahead, tears blurring the streetlights. I didn't breathe until I saw the glow of a busy intersection. Actual cars. Actual people. The first sign of life in what felt like hours. I pulled straight into a gas station, stumbled out, and ran inside. The clerk took one look at me and grabbed a phone. The police showed up fast. Faster than I expected. They searched the area, but the SUV was gone. Completely gone. Like it had evaporated into the night. No plates caught on cameras. No witnesses. Nothing. For weeks, I jumped at every engine rumble, every dark vehicle, every sound outside my window. I barely slept. I moved apartments, changed my routines, switched jobs. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the not knowing. Why me? What they wanted. What would have happened if I hadn't braked? If I hadn't hid? If I hadn't survived? On pure instinct and terror. I still see that silhouette sometimes when I'm driving at night. Just a dark shape behind tinted glass. I don't know if it's real or if my brain is replaying the worst night of my life on a loop. But every time a black SUV appears in my mirror, I feel the same cold rush down my spine, because I know someone out there chose me once, and if they wanted to, they could choose me again.